The story starts with our boy Kunan, a blind kid who one stormy night asks his family what seeing actually means. His dad explains that it's about colors and shapes, and even reminds him that his scarred eyes are proof of being part of a legendary hero's bloodline. But Kunan can still hear the servants whisper pity behind his back. Later, one of the maids takes him to his magic lessons. Kunan wonders why he even needs magic when he can't move around on his own. But his maid proudly reminds him he has the water emblem. His new tutor, Jai Course, introduces herself and they start training. Kunan tries a water spell called Aori and makes a tiny water bubble. When his tutor accidentally compares its size to an eyeball, she panics until Kunan gets excited and says, "If I can't see now, then I'll just create my own sight with magic." From that moment, Kunan becomes obsessed with experiencing the world. He wants to know what he's eating, what smells surround him, everything. His maid happily helps, even joking around with him until he threatens to lower her salary if she keeps teasing. This kid is savage. He also learns about his ancestor, the great hero Esther, who defeated the Demon King but lost his arm and leg. Since then, his descendants are born missing something: an arm, a leg, or their sight. People call it the hero's scar, but Kunan refuses to let that define him. He decides he'll use his own mana to create his own eyes, no matter how exhausting it is. Even though he's only 7, weak, and easily tired, Kunan pushes himself hard. His maid tells him to slow down, but also helps him train his body by letting him learn swordsmanship. Kunan thanks her, and of course she immediately asks for a raise only for him to roast her again. Time passes, and when his tutor Jenny returns, she's shocked by how much stronger he's become. He refuses to rest and jumps straight into magic practice again. Kunan is determined if the world won't give him vision, he'll build it himself. Kunan completely blows Jenny's mind. She can't believe how much he has improved when she only taught him the basics. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a maid tells Princess Mirika that her carriage is ready. The problem? Mirika really doesn't feel like visiting her fiancé. Every time she's seen Kunan, he's always gloomy, depressed, and drowning in self-pity. Still, the king arranged this engagement, so like a good royal, she has no choice but to go. On the way, she thinks Kunan is important to the kingdom because he carries the hero's scar, so she accepted this political marriage as her duty. But she really doesn't want to spend her whole life staring at a sad face. However, when she arrives, surprise, Kunan greets her happily with a big smile. She asks what happened to him, and he casually tells her he's having the time of his life learning magic. He even apologizes for worrying her and invites her to spend the day with him because he has so many fun things to talk about. Mirika is stunned she didn't know he could smile like that. Excited, she spends the whole day with him, and on her way back home, she's completely enchanted. Meanwhile, Kunan feels like it's the first time he has truly reached out to someone. His maid Aiko proudly tells him that's because he's a real gentleman. Later, Kunan asks Flora to teach him proper night etiquette so he can treat Princess Mirika the right way. Of course, Aiko jumps in and says he also needs to be a funny knight too. Meanwhile, Jenny is losing her sanity. Kunan can now create 7 perfect water spheres at once, something even she couldn't do. He's learning way too fast, and she's officially run out of basic magic to teach him. She knows intermediate magic is dangerous and definitely not something a 7-year-old should use, but this kid is built different. So even though she's scared, she refuses to give up. The next day she tells Kunan they'll try something new. He acts like a proper gentleman again, which shocks her, but she continues. She explains that Aori only creates water, but now he'll learn to change its properties: temperature, thickness, composition, color, everything. She shows him warm water and cold water, explaining that true magic comes from creativity. Kunan finds it super cool and tries it immediately. Aiko tastes the water and says it tastes like apple. Kunan laughs and says it's actually plum flavored. Jenny, meanwhile, is internally screaming because Kunan mastered spells she spent an entire sleepless night researching. This child is a walking headache. That night, Kunan realizes something important. He knows tastes and smells, but he still doesn't know colors. Without understanding color, creating eyes will be hard. Still, he refuses to give up. The next morning, Aiko asks what he wants to drink. And Kunan casually says, "Milk tea without milk. Don't ask, nobody knows." He then uses magic. The water runs over some fruit, and suddenly he freezes. Shocked, he says it felt like he could actually see something. Aiko freaks out with excitement and threatens to slap him if he's joking. Kunan tells her to wait because even he isn't sure yet. Aiko scolds Kunan because yes, she wanted a gentleman with humor, but she definitely didn't sign up for bad jokes. Kunan quickly tells her to calm down because he actually saw colors, or at least sensed them with magic. He tries to prove it and asks if a green apple is red. She laughs and says no, explaining that he doesn't know the names of colors since he's never actually seen them. She tells him green apples have a softer, lighter shade of green. Kunan complains that she's confusing him with all these different tones, and she just shrugs like, that's how colors work. Then she asks him how many apples are in front of him, and when he answers correctly, she's stunned. Later, Aiko reports everything to Kunan's father. She explains that even though Kunan's range is small, he can distinguish colors, and the closer he gets to something, the clearer he sees. If he touches it, his vision becomes super accurate. His father immediately asks if that means Kunan can read now. Aiko says he identifies the ink color with his fingers and, although he doesn't know letters yet, he loves looking at illustrations. Then Kunan's dad wonders if they should move him back to the main mansion. Kunan originally chose to live separately so he wouldn't bother anyone, and because his mother never left his side. Aiko explains that Kunan is changing, working hard every day, and putting him in a new environment might slow him down. His father agrees and jokes that if he wants to see his son, at least he's nearby, but Aiko will have to handle him alone. She proudly says she can do anything for money. Her honesty makes him laugh, saying it's probably good for Kunan. Aiko immediately asks for a raise, and of course, he just laughs harder. Some time later, Aiko meets Kunan again, who is preparing an experiment to impress Jenny when she arrives. She tells him to make something big. Kunan uses his Aori magic and creates a giant red water sphere. Right then, his family walks in. When he hears his mother's voice, he gets distracted and boom. The bubble explodes and paints him completely red. His mother goes into panic mode, while his father yells asking how he could do something so horrifying. Kunan is clueless until Aiko explains that red is the color of human blood, which makes the situation, very bad. His furious father punishes Kunan for 2 months and cuts Aiko's salary for 3. Poor Aiko practically dies inside. Meanwhile, Jenny is secretly watching everything. Instead of scolding him, she's just terrified in a good way. She realizes this kid is insanely talented and might actually reach the highest magical rank in existence, Blue Sorcerer. Time passes. Aiko later brings Kunan a bunch of new study materials. Now he's 9 years old, taller, sharper, and honestly kind of a pretty boy. But it's time for a new chapter school. Meanwhile, Kunan's father tells his older son he has a little job for him. He wants him to escort Kunan to the Noble Academy, because let's be real, Kunan barely ever leaves the mansion. His brother remembers how Kunan once asked him to go outside when they were younger, and now that moment has finally come. Even though Kunan is nervous because he can't see, his brother promises to hold his hand, but the last time he said that, he let go after one single step and Kunan smashed face first into the ground. This time, though, Big Bro swears he'll do better and tells their father he'll give it his all. Meanwhile, Kunan is learning hydromancy, a magic where you pour water into a mystical container to find objects or predict the future. Aiko jokingly asks if he can find her lost youth and shine. What a savage. Kunan calmly tells her she's still young and beautiful, and if he wasn't the son of a marquis, he'd totally propose. Aiko calls him a flirt and reminds him she's 10 years older, and they both laugh while Flora stares like, what is wrong with these weirdos? Later, Flora continues teaching him etiquette, but realizes she may have turned him into a certified flirt instead. Every sentence he says is a compliment. While drinking tea, he even proposes a toast to Flora's beautiful eyes. It worries her a bit, but honestly, this new charming Kunan is way better than the depressed one he used to be. That night, the group heads out to meet Kunan's father. While walking through the cold forest, Aiko asks if Kunan can handle it. So he uses Aori magic to make 2 giant warm water bubbles with soft stretchy membranes, instant magical heaters. He wonders why his father called him, half afraid he's in trouble. But Aiko reminds him they already learned from the massive fake blood tsunami incident. Kunon says that was her fault anyway, she asked for it extra large. When they reach the mansion, they're greeted by Balin and Kunon's older brother, Ino. They walk together, and Ibu asks if Kunon wants to hold hands again. Kunon confidently says no, he can sense his surroundings pretty well now. Ino smiles, remembering how sad his brother used to be, and tells him he's happy to see him doing so well. Finally, they meet their parents. Kunon's father says Flora already confirmed Kunon has basically learned everything nobles study, but asks if he'd like to attend a real school. Kunon declines. He doesn't want to bother anyone, and honestly, he has other priorities. His father reassures him he's free to choose, but explains nobles are required to attend school. Kunon actually is enrolled, but because of his situation, the king granted him a special exemption. Kunon calls it nepotism, basically special treatment, and his dad begs him not to think like that. They argue a little about school, allowances, and responsible spending, and Kunon even asks if his dad is still mad about the giant blood garden incident. Spoiler, yes. If it happens again, goodbye allowance for months. His mom drags them back to the main topic. His father then mentions Princess Mirica. If Kunon skips school forever, it could hurt her reputation too. Thinking about her, Kunon finally agrees to attend even if he finds it annoying. His father tells him he doesn't have to stay long, just take 5 promotion exams. If he passes, he graduates. Only 5 visits total. Ido then reveals Princess Mirica will be graduating in the next test, so Kunon will be graduating alongside her. Kunon's mom immediately freaks out with excitement, rushes to prepare clothes, and drags Aiko with her. Kunon's father warns Ino that besides the princess, there are other royals at the academy who might try to get close to Kunon. Ino tells him not to worry, he'll stay by Kunon's side the whole time. Later, Kunon meets Princess Mirica and tells her he'll be taking the promotion exams. She gets super excited because that means they can actually spend time together at school. Since he's never attended before, she happily declares that she'll be his personal guide. Kunon thanks her but worries that the boys who like her will get jealous. Mirica nervously laughs and says she doubts that'll be a problem. When Kunon asks if she isn't popular, she proudly says, "Baby, don't insult me. Of course I'm popular." Then admits she only has like 5 admirers. So yeah, popular, but limited edition. Months pass, and Kunon gets ready like a medieval Gojo Satoru. Aiko tells him he looks amazing, and he jokingly panics like his secret identity has been exposed. Ino just wonders when his brother became this dramatic. Before leaving, Kunon uses magic to cover the carriage wheels, making the ride smooth and silent. Ino asks if he feels okay being far from home. Kunon admits he feels guilty for worrying everyone in the past, for the times he fell and got hurt, and for when he wanted to disappear from the world. But now he wants to live no matter what. Ino is touched right until Kunon proudly adds that he plans to live so long, he'll feel bad for all the humans who die before him. Ito immediately blames Aiko for whatever unholy personality upgrade this is. They finally arrive at the academy and are welcomed by Princess Mirica. She compliments Kunon's bow tie. He thanks her but wonders if it might actually be cuter than she is. She boldly says that's impossible, and Kunon is relieved otherwise he'd have to throw the tie away. Ino watches them like, what kind of conversations do these two even have? As they prepare to enter, Kunon stops. Surrounded by voices and noise, he realizes the old him would have frozen in fear, but he isn't that boy anymore. He quietly asks Mirica to hold his hand. Meanwhile, a nervous new teacher named Katz waits for him. She read that Kunon is painfully shy. Yeah, about that he is not shy anymore. The students instantly start whispering about him, amazed by the boy with the hero's scar. Katz introduces herself as his guide, and Kunon introduces himself back, then casually says that at the moment, he's actually a beautiful lady. Katz stands there like, what is this child even talking about? The bell rings, everyone leaves, and she realizes this day will not be easy. From above, some nobles watch, calling Kunon the blessed scarred hero. But when the prince gets annoyed, they immediately change tone and call it superstition. The prince clearly hates how well Kunan and his sister get along and storms off with his guards. Later, Katz asks if Kunan understands how promotion exams work. He does, but she explains they're making a special exception, so he'll take them faster than normal. Kunan immediately accuses them of nepotism, saying his dad and the king are best buddies and probably forced the school. Katz pretends she heard nothing and hands him the exam. The kid keeps complaining anyway, ranting about conspiracies while answering every question perfectly. Afterward, Katz is stunned he talked non-stop and still aced everything. In the cafeteria, Kunan and Mirika run into Prince Layli. People instantly crowd around them. Ino sees the chaos and gets worried. The prince questions whether Kunan really has divine blessings. Mirika tells him not to start trouble, but the prince coldly orders her not to interfere, and things are clearly about to get messy. But thankfully Eno jumps in first. Prince Layli rudely declares no one may speak without his permission, backed by his followers. Iso is already stressed about royalty causing trouble, but Kunan casually uses Ori magic to gather tiny water droplets and soak the prince's pants, then innocently asks if he wet himself. Humiliated, Layli denies it and runs off, while Inno and Mirika immediately realize Kunan is responsible. Kunan dodges the topic, saying he just wants a hamburger. Over food, Mirika reveals the prince is her older brother, the 7th prince. Kunan says a brother who doesn't value his sister doesn't deserve the title anyway, hoping that ends things. Ino simply wishes for a peaceful graduation, but elsewhere, the furious Layli is already plotting revenge. After they sit down, Kunan asks everyone why Lyall was making such a big scene earlier for no clear reason. Mirika explains that it was probably his way of keeping her in line. Lyall is the 6th prince, while she's only the 9th princess, so technically she ranks below him. However, since she's engaged to Kunan, a sorcerer marked with the hero's scar, her status suddenly shoots way up. Lyall likely felt threatened by the idea of Mirika outranking him, so he tried to assert dominance. Still, Mirika admits he's not necessarily a bad person. Kunan feels a little guilty and wonders if he went too far, even considering an apology. But everyone quickly shuts that down, telling him Lyall had it coming after the stunt he pulled. Back at home, Kunan starts training in a new way, changing the texture of ice to feel like other materials. This time, he makes ice that feels exactly like an apple. His teacher is impressed, but advises him to experience more textures so he can expand his abilities. Soon, the day of the final exam arrives. At school, Ixio notices that Kunan has been touching the horse a lot lately and asks what's going on. Kunan casually says he's collecting samples, which only leaves Ixio more confused. A bit later, Mirika arrives to greet him. Kunan admits he's going to miss talking to her at school since it's his last day. Mirika smiles and reminds him that the day isn't over yet, there's no need for goodbyes so soon. They head into the exam room, and Kunan is thrilled. It's his first time taking a class alongside other students. Still, he knows he'll miss the quiet one-on-one sessions he used to have with Professor Cass. Cass reassures him that she'll still be keeping a close eye on him, even with others around. Ixio notices how close Kunan and Cass seem to be, and Kunan explains it's only natural after spending so much time talking during his exams. He even learned some surprising things like how Cass only became a teacher because she had a crush on another applicant. That man failed the exam, while Cass passed. Unsure what else to do, she stayed on and became a teacher instead. The others agree that it's nice Kunan and Professor Cass get along so well, but they also admit it's a little strange for a teacher to complain about her love life to a kid. Soon, several students approach Ixio and Mirika, asking to be introduced to Kunan. He politely introduces himself, relieved he'd started to worry no one ever talked to them because they had no friends. Mirika clears it up, explaining she asked her friends to keep their distance so she could spend time with Kunan. Kunan feels relieved, though he admits he doesn't really mind being alone either. As the final exam is about to begin, Lyall is still outside, posing dramatically and claiming someone as important as him doesn't need exams. His confidence collapses when his followers remind him he'll have to repeat the year if he skips, forcing him to head inside. Back in the classroom, Kunnan is busy feeling the feathers of a pigeon near the window when Cass announces that the exam is starting and everyone should take their seats. Mirika tells Kunnan she saved a spot next to her. But before he can respond, Lyle steps in between them and glares at him. Ixio stays quiet, remembering something he once overheard from the palace maids. They often talked about how badly Lyle messes things up, but never to his face, since he's still royalty. That's why Lyle is always so angry. Deep down, he knows people act polite around him, but probably mock him behind his back. Suddenly, Kunnan grabs Lyle's hand and introduces himself properly. Lyle panics and yells that he never gave permission to be touched. Kunnan calmly reminds him that they're going to be brothers-in-law someday, so it's only right they get to know each other. Kunnan starts feeling Lyle's hand and casually remarks that, judging by his skin, Lyle must have a handsome face. It's an honest compliment, but Lyle isn't used to those. Completely thrown off, he turns to Mirika and asks if something is wrong with Kunnan. Mirika bursts out laughing, and soon the entire class joins in. At first, Lyle thinks they're laughing at him, but Mirika explains they're laughing because it's the first time anyone has ever seen him so flustered. Lyle denies it immediately and demands Kunnan let go of his hand. Kunnan holds on for a few more seconds, then adds one last comment. Lyle's voice sounds strong too. Lyle originally planned to be rude to Kunnan and put him in his place, but after their interaction, he has no idea how to react anymore. Before things can get any more awkward, Professor Cass calls everyone to their seats and officially starts the exam. By the end of the day, the test is over, the papers are graded, and Cass announces the results. Everyone passes. That means everyone graduates. The classroom erupts with relief and excitement. Soon after, Kunnan and Ixio board the carriage to head home while everyone waves goodbye. Kunnan says he had a great time and casually tells Cass that if she's still looking for a boyfriend, she should consider Ixio since he's single. Ixio immediately denies agreeing to this, and Cass starts regretting ever talking to Kunnan about her love life. Meanwhile, Lyle quietly reflects on what happened. He actually learned something from Kunnan and decides he'll try to be nicer from now on. A few days later, with the academy behind him, Kunnan focuses on learning new spells. Jenny tests him by asking him to create a spinning ball of water, split it into 10, and give each one a different color and texture. Kunnan does it effortlessly. Jenny praises him, but Kunnan says he's not finished yet. He then turns one of the water spheres into a dove and sends it flying into the air. Jenny is completely stunned. She drops to her knees, knowing even master water mages couldn't pull that off so easily. Later, over tea, Jenny asks for a private talk. Once they're alone, she admits there's nothing left for her to teach him. She was only meant to guide him through basic magic, and now he's far beyond her level. There's no reason for her to remain his teacher. Kunnan insists she's a wonderful teacher and thanks her for turning every desperate trick into a lesson. Even if she's not a high-level mage, her creativity gave him hope, and he truly values that. Jenny appreciates the praise but admits she's exhausted. Coming up with lessons for him has pushed her to her limit. Kunnan assumes it's about money and offers to ask his father for a raise. But Jenny says it's the opposite. She feels guilty earning such a high salary when she barely has anything left to teach him. She believes Kunnan deserves a far greater sorcerer as his mentor. Kunnan begs her to stay, but there's nothing more she can do. After saying goodbye, Jenny leaves the mansion, thinking to herself that Kunnan is a true genius and that it's only a matter of time before he becomes one of the greatest mages on the continent. Determined not to fall behind, she vows to train her own magic. The next morning, Aiko tells Kunnan that his academic tutor, Miss Flora, has resigned. He's shocked but understands he's already completed the curriculum and graduated. Still, he wishes he could have said goodbye and decides to write her a thank you letter later. Aiko agrees, but jokingly asks him to check if Flora knows any single 20-year-old men who might want to marry her. The joke hurts Kunnan. To him, it feels like everyone is leaving. Aiko explains she's just thinking about her future and believes Kunnan will be fine alone, but he disagrees. Jenny is gone. Flora is gone. And now Aiko wants to leave too. He fears he'll end up alone. That night at dinner, Kunnan tells his father about Jenny quitting and her suggestion to find a master sorcerer. His father recalls a rumor about a powerful royal sorcerer. Their mother realizes he means Zainal Finn, a mage famous across the capital for both his strength and looks. He sounds perfect, but there's a problem. As a royal sorcerer, Zainal only takes orders from the king or royal court. He rarely leaves the castle, and even meeting him is restricted. Training under him is almost impossible, but Cunnin's father agrees to ask the king. At the royal castle, the Grand Master Mage receives the request. An apprentice-level boy asking to train under a royal sorcerer, something unheard of, even for a noble's son. His apprentice, Mirika's older sister, personally likes Cunnin, but royal sorcerers don't care about status. The Grand Master plans to reject the request immediately, until he reads Cunnin's file. That's when he realizes this kid might actually be special. A few days later, Cunnin and his dad head to the royal capital after receiving rare permission to meet the royal sorcerer, something almost no one ever gets. Even they're shocked it worked, but if the meeting goes well, Cunnin might finally get the tutor he's been hoping for. Cunnin thanks his dad for pulling strings, but his father insists it wasn't nepotism. The royal sorcerers simply became interested after reading Cunnin's file, though even he doesn't know why. To kill time on the way, Cunnin creates a cat made entirely of water. His spell control has clearly improved because it looks and feels exactly like a real cat, except it can't move properly or make sounds. His dad doesn't care and absolutely loves it anyway. At the castle, they're greeted by Lady Raisha, who turns out to be the second princess and Mara's older sister. Cunnin casually greets her as his future sister-in-law. Raisha notices the cat and finds it adorable until Cunnin cancels the spell and it splashes back into a puddle. Realizing it was magic the whole time, she's stunned that a child could fool her so easily, which makes her reassess just how skilled Cunnin really is. Impressed, she offers to take him straight to the Black Tower. Before leaving, Cunnin's dad mentions he has an audience with the king later and asks if Cunnin can manage on his own. Cunnin confidently says yes, so his dad arranges a carriage to pick him up later. As Cunnin and Raisha walk through the halls, Cunnin bombards her with questions about advanced magic at lightning speed. She admits she's still new herself and can't keep up. Raisha explains that the kingdom has 10 princesses and 7 princes, all usually competing for the throne. She gave up her claim to become a sorcerer instead and quietly worries Cunnin might get dragged into royal politics. Mid-thought, she realizes Cunnin isn't walking anymore, he's sliding. He explains he froze a thin layer of ice under his feet to reduce friction and even offers to teach her. She's excited but reminds him of the Black Tower's rules first. Don't join factions, don't sign shady contracts, and don't say anything that could ruin your future. Rules explained, she immediately asks him to turn her shoes into skates. Moments later, the two are joyfully skating through the halls, causing total chaos. Guards try and fail to stop them. Then the knight captain, Dario, shows up and gives chase. Cunnin worries they're in trouble, but Raisha just tells him to go faster. Sadly for them, Dario clearly never skips leg day and catches them easily, giving them a long lecture in the courtyard. After that adventure, Cunnin is finally taken to meet Akar, the Grand Mage. One look tells Cunnin this man is the real deal. Akar checks Cunnin's water crest on his right shoulder and reveals it's a 2-star crest, a classification Cunnin has never heard of. Akar explains there are 7 crest types, 4 elements plus light, dark, and foul, and each has ranks. 2-star is common, sitting near the lower end. Raisha mentions she's also a 2-star, with a wind crest. Cunnin then assumes Akar must be higher, explaining that the magic density around him feels much stronger, like comparing regular cheese to premium blue cheese. Akar finds the analogy funny, but firmly tells Cunnin never to call him cheese again. Joke aside, Akar finally reveals the truth. He has a 4-star crest. Having a low or high crest number doesn't actually show how skilled someone is at magic, it only shows how much total magic energy they have. With the boring stuff out of the way, Akar invites Cunnin to the courtyard so the fun can officially start. Downstairs, a crowd of royal sorcerers gathers after hearing rumors about Cunnin's talent. Akar decides to test him and asks another sorcerer, Victo, to begin. Victo surrounds himself with dozens of floating water balls, and Akar tells Cunnin to break through the spell using his own magic. Kunnan freezes. This is the first time he's ever tried to interfere with another mage spell. He remembers that water magic can control existing water, but he never imagined trying to steal control from someone else. Still, he gives it his best shot and ends up mentally wrestling Victo for control. It's far tougher than he expected, and by the end, he manages to claim only 2 water balls. Kunnan thinks he failed, but everyone else thinks the opposite. Victo admits he never expected Kunnan to take even 1, let alone 2. In fact, Kunnan exceeded all expectations. Akar, clearly amused, asks him to show more. Next, Kunnan creates a giant water balloon in the middle of the courtyard, which Akar immediately starts bouncing on like an excited child. Kunnan nervously wonders if it's okay for the Grand Mage to be playing around during work hours. When asked how he made it, Kunnan explains it's just a water ball modified to be extremely elastic, strong enough to bounce someone all the way to the 2nd floor. Akar decides he's had enough bouncing for the day. Raisha then asks if Kunnan can make other shapes out of water, like people. To prove it, he creates a water doll that looks like Eco. It still can't move naturally, and when he makes it fly, it looks more creepy than cool. Unfortunately, a few castle maids spot it through a window and mistake it for a ghost. Panic breaks out, knights rush in, and the sorcerers immediately start blaming Victo for some reason. Kunnan feels awful. He's been scolded twice on his very first day. Akar tells him not to dwell on it and suggests that next time, they talk magic over lunch instead. Kunnan asks if this means he passed the test, and Akar says the answer should be obvious. He personally promises to assign Kunnan, a royal sorcerer, as his tutor. Kunnan is overjoyed, though he worries it might look like he's siding with a royal faction. Raisha reassures him that royal sorcerers stay out of politics, which puts him at ease. Before Kunnan leaves, Akar asks one final question. What is his goal with magic? Kunnan replies that he wants to someday create new eyeballs for himself using magic. Everyone is moved by his answer and supports his dream. But the mood shifts when Kunnan finds his father waiting and clearly angry. He's heard about Kunnan getting scolded twice in one day and demands an explanation. Raisha tries to take the blame, but his father says it doesn't matter. A sorcerer is always responsible for the consequences of their magic. Someone with the power to kill thousands can't hide behind, "I was just following orders." If an order could hurt others, it must be refused. Kunnan understands, apologizes, and promises to do better. His father leaves, but Kunnan plans to stay a bit longer since he has dinner planned with Mura. Raisha reminds him he's already late, and Kunnan doesn't want to run there sweaty. She suggests flying instead. As a wind mage, she just needs a platform. Kunnan creates another water balloon, makes it float, and once they're airborne, Raisha uses her wind magic to push them forward. It's thrilling, right up until they realize they forgot about landing. They crash safely, thanks to the water balloon, but unfortunately, they land right in front of Dario. It's the 3rd time he's caught them causing trouble, and he is not amused. While Mura is still getting ready, Kunnan and Raisha are busy getting scolded again. Mirika is alerted the moment Kunnan arrives, and she practically sprints to the door, thrilled for their long-awaited date. Soon after, the two head to their reserved restaurant. Once seated, Mirika asks how his visit to the Black Tower went. Kunnan can't stop smiling. He tells her he met Mirika's sister, spoke with several mages, and even passed the evaluation. All that's left now is to be assigned an instructor, though he still has no idea who it'll be. A maid quietly observes the pair and notices Kunnan doing most of the talking while Mirika listens with a soft smile. She doesn't interrupt. Mirika clearly looks happy. The reason Kunnan is talking non-stop is simple. Ever since graduation, time with Mirika has become rare. He's trying to squeeze every thought and feeling into this one evening. He even promises that once they're married, he'll make sure they spend as much time together as she wants. That single line makes Mirika's heart flutter so much that even after the date ends, she spends hours in bed kicking her feet in pure happiness. Kunnan is back at home, focused on writing a report. He's interrupted when Eiko calls him outside, asking for help with her magic. She wants him to create soap bubbles to make washing clothes easier. Kunnan agrees, though he's clearly annoyed about the delay. Eiko scolds him for spending too much time indoors, warning that without sunlight, he'll never grow taller. Nervous, Kunan asks if girls really prefer tall guys. She admits most do, but quickly adds that she'll like him either way, even if he stays a tiny munchkin. After finishing the laundry, the two lie on the grass. Kunan asks if any letters arrived for him, but Eiko says there's nothing. When she presses him, he admits he's waiting to hear who his instructor will be. Unfortunately, there's still no word from the tower. What Kunan doesn't know is that the decision has already been made. Most mages are just too terrified to deliver the news. Eventually, one unlucky mage gathers his courage and visits Xian's room, only to find it buried under mountains of paperwork. When Xian wakes up, he nearly explodes in rage until he hears the Grandmaster wants to see him. His attitude flips instantly. Days later, Kunan finally receives his letter. His instructor has been chosen. Eiko is ecstatic until she reads the name. Xian, the legendary mage feared and admired across the kingdom. Women everywhere would do anything just to meet him, and now Eiko might get to speak with him personally. Meanwhile, Rhea and Mirika head to the royal castle. Because royal sorcerers need direct orders to leave their posts, they plan to officially command Xian to guard Mirika, giving her the perfect excuse to visit Kunan. On the way, Mirika runs into her older sisters, Everil and Lydalia. Unlike Raisha, her relationship with them is strained. They sneer at Mirika, praising Kunan's talent while mocking her as a useless tag along living in his shadow. Rishia immediately shuts them down, telling them to move if they have nothing worthwhile to say. Powerless, the sisters storm off. Later, Kunan waits in his garden with Eiko as the carriage arrives. He steps forward, expecting Xian, but Mirika exits first. He didn't expect her, yet he's instantly happy. Seeing her always lifts his heart. Then Xian steps out. Kunan freezes. Eiko internally panics, but forces herself to stay composed. The pressure radiating from Xian's magic is suffocating. Kunan instantly understands this man exists on a completely different plane from every other royal sorcerer. Mirika notices his silence and checks on him. Kunan brushes it off and introduces himself. Xian, clearly uninterested, admits he only came because the Grandmaster mentioned an interesting kid, though he doubts Kunan deserves the praise. Dario then introduces himself as the knight assigned to guard both Mirika and Xian. Kunan greets him warmly, surprising Mirika. He explains that Dario scolded him and Rishia multiple times during their last visit to the capital, though he admits the knight was just doing his job. Soon after, Kunan, Xian, and Mirika sit together in the garden. Kunan barely acknowledges Xian, too busy chatting with Mirika. Annoyed, Xian slams his fist on the table and demands they talk about magic. He starts grilling Kunan with high-level questions, clearly trying to expose gaps in his knowledge. But Kunan doesn't falter. When asked about compound spells, he explains how splitting and rearranging magic circles creates entirely new effects. Xian asks how many divisions Kunan can manage, expecting a modest number. Kunan casually answers that he can handle 31 sections and sometimes even 32, though it's unstable. Xian is stunned. Now he understands why the Grandmaster was so invested. Still, he smugly claims he can manage 50. That number leaves Kunan speechless. But Xian presses further, asking how Kunan broke past the infamous 20-section wall. Kunan explains that once he began layering spells, the limitation disappeared entirely. This genuinely impresses Xian. Discovering something so advanced alone is rare. Still, he decides to push Kunan further. Kunan excitedly asks to see a 50-layer spell. Xian refuses, saying there's no point, and besides, he hasn't officially accepted him as a student. Instead, he conjures an enormous, flawless earth wall and tells Kunan to destroy it if he wants to be taught. He also asks for that rumored waterbed spell so he can watch comfortably. The moment Xian lies down, he instantly falls asleep from how absurdly comfortable it is. Eiko doesn't blame him, the same thing happened to her. Kunan studies the wall. It's reinforced, smooth, and dense with magic easily over 40 sections. Even if he can't replicate it, he already knows how to break it. Rather than acting immediately, he waits chatting with Mirika until Xian wakes up. 2 hours later, Xian opens his eyes and scoffs at the untouched wall, asking if Kunan gave up. Calmly, Kunan says he simply hadn't started yet. When Xian gives the signal, Kunan casts a simple bubble spell. Xian instantly understands. No matter how strong the wall is, it's still dirt. Saturate it with enough water, and it will collapse on its own. Xian praises him. Where most mages rely on brute force, Kunnan shows precision and patience. That alone earns him recognition, and Xian officially accepts him as his student. Kunnan is overjoyed. He has a legendary master and Mirika by his side. But Xian immediately warns him training will leave no room for distractions. Then Xian turns to Mirika and asks what she plans to do. With Kunnan's talent, power, and future influence, countless women will chase him. How will she stand out? Kunnan snaps back, telling Xian to stop. Xian insists he wasn't being cruel, he was actually rooting for her. Still, Kunnan says some truths don't need to be spoken. With Xian's attitude, it wouldn't surprise him if he once drove away the woman he loved. The words strike deeper than expected. Xian explodes, yelling at Kunnan to shut up. That night, Mirika lies awake, thinking about everything Xian said. She knows Kunnan is destined for greatness, and if she wants to remain by his side, she realizes she can't stay the same. She'll need to grow stronger too. A few days later, Xian and Erika return to Kunnan's house for his next lesson. Kunnan is super excited, until he realizes today's training isn't training at all. Instead, Xian drags him into an empty office and dumps a mountain of documents on the table. This was supposed to be Xian's job, but he's way too lazy. He tells Kunnan to finish everything by the end of the day, then casually asks him to make a waterbed so he can nap. Since Kunnan is busy all day, Mira won't get to talk to him. Eiko offers her some tea, but Mira politely declines and asks for a favor instead. She wants to secretly practice swordsmanship while she's here. She asks Eiko to keep it hidden from Kunnan because she wants to surprise him once she's strong enough to feel worthy of him. Outside, Mira trains hard. Inside, Kunnan struggles through the paperwork. Xian's handwriting is so bad it honestly qualifies him as a doctor. When Xian asks if he's done, Kunnan admits he's only halfway through. Xian calls him slow, and Kunnan fires back that he'd be finished if Xian didn't write like a toddler. Since half the notes are unreadable, Kunnan ends up reconstructing the theories himself. Xian admits his handwriting is awful, but claims its intentional deciphering messy notes forces real understanding, not just memorization. It actually works, so Kunnan thanks him, even though it's obvious Xian just dumped his work on him. Before leaving, Kunnan asks about a strange spell diagram. Xian says it's easier to show than explain and tells him to visit the Black Tower next time. A few days later, Kunnan arrives at the Black Tower, where the royal sorcerers excitedly want to see his magic. But Xian drags him away, knocking everyone out with waterbeds. Xian explains magic tools, everyday items powered by magic, then shows off his latest invention, a magic lunchbox that keeps food hot. The metal parts are finished, but the soft internal mechanisms need precision, so Xian recruits Kunnan. When the Grandmaster interrupts to invite Kunnan to lunch, Xian solves it the usual way, another waterbed. They complete the lunchbox together, with Xian handling the outer structure and Kunnan managing the delicate internals. Afterward, other sorcerers praise Kunnan and even suggest he change teachers, but Kunnan says he's happy with Xian, making everyone jealous. Kunnan later learns Erika has already started noble school. Asked about his future, Kunnan says he'll skip classes and just take the graduation exam. The Grandmaster suggests the Magic Academy open at age 12, giving him 2 years to decide. Even Xian agrees. 2 years pass. Kunnan masters 55 section spells, reaching Xian's level. The completed lunchbox becomes a kingdom-wide success. The only catch? Xian takes all the royalties despite Kunnan doing half the work. And Kunnan is not amused. Kunnan and Xian have already collaborated on 8 magic tools and 5 magic theory papers, but one day Xian suddenly tells Kunnan he'll handle future work alone. When Xian insists the unfinished insect trapping device is no longer Kunnan's concern, Kunnan realizes the truth: Xian is deliberately pushing him away. Xian explains why. Kunnan is about to turn 12, old enough to enroll in magic school. Kunnan doesn't want to leave and argues he can keep learning from Xian, but Xian shuts that down. As an earth mage, there are limits to what he can teach a water mage like Kunnan. At school, Kunin might meet water mages far more skilled, and the world beyond Helia is much bigger than he thinks. Though Kunin understands, leaving still hurts. Mira then takes his hand and encourages him to go, promising that when he returns, she'll have grown into someone worthy of standing beside him. Touched, Kunin agrees until he learns how far the school is. After some hesitation, he accepts and asks how to prepare. Xion gives him simple advice: don't lose sight of what truly matters. That advice hits hard. Kunin remembers why he learned magic in the first place, to create eyes for himself. Over time, magic had made life too easy, and he'd forgotten its true purpose. Even with everything Xion taught him, 55-layer spells, 3D magic circles, and imaginary magic code, creating magic eyes is something no one has ever done. This challenge is his alone, but Xion believes in him completely. Kunin devotes himself to researching magic eyeballs. His first idea, a reflective water sphere, works as a mirror but fails to transmit images to his brain. After countless failed attempts, he's exhausted. The next morning, Kunin realizes the first thing he wants to see with his new eyes is the faces of his loved one. Later that day, he finally succeeds by combining a water mirror with a real logic sand pattern. The image tracks movement and transmits directly to his mind. For the first time, Kunin truly sees the world. It's beautiful. But then he notices something terrifying: a giant crab standing right behind him, and it absolutely shouldn't be there. Kunin decides to ignore everything for now because this moment is special. He had always planned that the first thing he'd do after gaining vision was look at himself. So he creates a magic mirror and stares hard, only to realize his face is kinda mid. Yeah, the big reveal was not as legendary as he imagined. After that disappointment, he turns to the giant crab in the room and asks why it's even there, because this is definitely not normal. The crab doesn't respond, and for a second Kunin wonders if this is Eiko's true form. But that theory dies fast when Eiko suddenly bursts into the room. She scares him so badly that he stumbles straight into the crab, except his hand goes right through it. He can see it clearly, but it's not physically there. Meanwhile, Eiko is confused why Kunin is swinging at invisible air. Then she notices the floating magic eye and realizes he finally succeeded. She gets super excited and hugs him tightly, accidentally knocking the eye around and making Kunin dizzy. After apologizing, she offers to cook a huge feast to celebrate. Kunin loves the idea, but there's still one problem. The giant crab is still standing there, and Eiko can't see it at all. Things get even stranger when Kunin notices a black horn on Eiko's head, something she's never mentioned and clearly doesn't know exists. Confused and overwhelmed, Kunin decides to ignore it for now and deal with it later. Soon, he steps outside to experience the world for the first time. He expects beautiful fields and blue skies, but instead sees dark land, a black sun, and a gloomy atmosphere. Since he's never seen the sky before, he has no idea if this is normal or totally cursed. Eiko joins him as they head to the main house to share the good news. But the invisible crab keeps following Kunin everywhere. Inside, Ixio and Kunin's mother celebrate his new vision. But now Kunin sees even more weird stuff. Ixio has wings, and his mom has two different colored eyes. They look awesome, but nobody else can see it. Then his father rushes in, and instead of a cool feature, he looks like a walking disaster straight out of a nightmare. Realizing no one knows about their strange appearances, Kunin decides to ask Xion for help. Soon, word reaches the royal castle, and Xion is allowed to visit. Mirika rushes to greet him first, curious to see how the eye works. Kunin explains that it doesn't replace his normal sight, it projects images straight into his mind, but his real eyes still need to stay open. That's when Mirika realizes he's been keeping them shut the whole time and tells him to look at her properly. Nervously, Kunin opens his eyes, and thankfully, she looks completely normal and just as beautiful as always, except for one tiny detail. There's a random feather sticking out of her head. Weird, but close enough to normal. Dario shows up next, and in Kunin's strange vision, he's holding what looks like a legendary sword. But nothing tops Xion's entrance. To Kunin, Xion doesn't even look human anymore, he looks like a glowing figure made of pure light. The brightness is so intense it feels like staring at a phone screen on full brightness in the middle of the night. Kunin pulls Xian aside and explains everything: the giant crab creature, the distorted appearances, and the visions that won't go away. Xian laughs at first, thinking it's a joke, but quickly understands Kunin is serious. He offers two theories. First, the magic eye might allow Kunin to see people's souls, and those souls take strange shapes. Second, it could be magic sickness, a condition where strong magical energy overloads the brain, causing dizziness and hallucinations of invisible beings. Xian admits he once experienced something similar and saw floating creatures with no physical form, which sounds dangerously close to Kunin's crab monster. There's no definite answer yet, so Xian tells him to keep watching and look for patterns. When Kunin worries he messed up the spell, Xian shuts that thought down immediately. Anything created by someone as talented as Kunin wouldn't fail so easily. He reminds him that even in nature, every creature sees the world differently. Some have dozens of eyes, others have none. There's no single right way to see reality. What Kunin is witnessing might not be a flaw. It could be something incredibly important. For now, Xian advises him to keep it secret. Until they understand it better, drawing attention could bring trouble. Kunin agrees, though staring at Xian still feels like staring into a living flashlight. That evening, Marika finishes training and waits outside with Eiko, while Xian continues talking to Kunin. While waiting, she mentions Kunin's birthday is coming up and wonders what gift she should get him. Eiko laughs and tells her not to overthink it. Anything from her will make him happy. When Kunin finally comes out with Xian bursts into laughter after seeing Marika, imagining how ridiculous she must look in Kunin's vision with that feather on her head. Later, Eiko helps Kunin clean his office. When she asks what to do with a pile of books, he tells her to return them to the library. He's already finished reading them all. The reason for the cleanup soon becomes clear. Today is Kunin's 12th birthday, and he's officially chosen to leave for magic school. That night, his family throws him a small celebration. Everyone is proud, but the joy is mixed with sadness since he'll be leaving for years. His mother struggles the most, worrying about life without him around. Kunin promises that no matter how far he goes, she'll always be in his heart. Later, Kunin and Marika stand together on the balcony. She asks if he's ready, and he says he only packed his favorite clothes and the essentials. He can buy everything else later. Sadly, Marika won't be able to see him off because of school, but Kunin understands. Then she gives him her gift. Inside the box is a beautiful bracelet. She explains that she bought matching ones for both of them. Whenever things get hard at magic school, she wants him to talk to it like he's talking to her. She'll do the same, so no matter how far apart they are, they won't feel alone. Kunin promises to write letters as often as he can. Marika promises the same. They swear to wait for each other no matter how long it takes. On the day Kunin leaves, his family gathers to say goodbye, all struggling to hold back tears. They expect Kunin to break down too, but he's already accepted it. He knows it's only 4 or 5 years. And more than anything, he's excited. New sorcerers, new challenges, a brand new adventure. 5 days pass, and Kunin is still traveling toward the magic school like it's located on the other side of the world. Eiko finally loses patience and asks how long this journey is supposed to take. Kunin casually drops the truth. The school is in another kingdom, and they haven't even left Hulia yet. At this pace, it'll take almost a month. The only good news is they're about to reach his grandpa's mansion to rest. But Kunin feels uneasy. Eiko has already made it clear she doesn't want to stay a maid forever. She wants a husband, kids, and a real future. And now this trip could be her chance to leave. Soon, they arrive at Grandpa's place, and Kunin is overjoyed since it's been 4 years. The mansion even has a massive magic library, the real reason Kunin begged to come. Grandpa rushes out happily, demon horns and all, which still feels weird to Kunin. To celebrate Kunin joining magic school, Grandpa offers to buy him anything, literally anything. Sadly, Kunin's mom already sent a letter limiting him to 500k. Grandpa is crushed since he was planning to buy a whole cruise ship. Then Kunin asks for a new maid, and that's when they meet Ringo, Eiko's little sister. She's basically Eiko 2.0, except she already has a fiancé, which somehow makes Eiko jealous. Ringo is nervous about serving a noble hero Scar Kid, but Kunin turns out super chill. Eiko warns her that Kunin forgets to eat when studying magic, so sandwiches are now part of her job. She also tells Ringo not to fill his head with naughty ideas or turn him into a playboy. Ringo promises, though she admits girls will probably swarm him anyway since he's kind, smart, and handsome. Eiko refuses to believe that, and they argue until they remember the sandwiches. The next morning, Eiko hugs Kunin tightly goodbye, saying she'll miss him but believes he'll be okay. Then Kunin and Ringo head toward magic school. Kunin worries about keeping her away from her fiancé for years, but Ringo smiles and explains they agreed she'd work to save money for the restaurant they planned to open. A few days later, they stop in a city packed with magic shops. Ringo is amazed. Kunin spots a cool magic book in a window and rushes inside like a kid in a candy store. He wants it badly but says buying magic books would make him poor. Then Ringo checks the price. 5 million. At that price, she could open an entire restaurant empire. Kunin just shrugs. Magic books are usually one of a kind, and rare things don't come cheap. The shop owner overhears and asks if he's from the magic school. Kunin explains he's a mage but hasn't enrolled yet. The woman gets excited and politely asks him to show some magic. Kunin creates a tiny water cat in her hands. She's completely stunned. She's never seen a spell like that before. She admits she's not a mage, just a huge magic fan, and warns him the competition in Darashik is brutal this year. The saint from the Holy Kingdom is joining, and last year they had monsters like the Inferno Prince and the Lightning Bolt. Since she's in a good mood, she offers him a famous grimoire by the legendary mage Xion at a discount. Kunin casually declines because he literally helped Xion write it. Ringo is still shocked by the prices as they leave. Next, they stop at a fabric shop. Kunin touches everything like a curious cat, annoying the owner who assumes he's rich nobility. When yelled at, Kunin calmly says he just wanted to feel the textures. He asks about rare dark fox fur and after feeling it once, casually creates a dark fox using magic. The owner nearly faints. Kunin explains he collects texture samples so his magic creations feel real. Moments later, the saint and her group enter the shop and find the dark fox. When she touches it, the spell breaks and dumps water all over the shop owner's lap, and she proceeds to examine the magic while he suffers in public embarrassment. Eventually, Kunin and Ringo reach the magic school only to learn the dorms are full. The receptionist Lubel explains students were supposed to apply early, but Xion never told Kunin. Now they're basically homeless. Hotels are too expensive, so they rent a small house using a list Lubel provides. Meanwhile, in a dark room at the school, the staff review applicants and Kunin's name strangely catches their attention. The next day is the entrance exam. Ringo isn't allowed inside and even tries to bribe Lubel, which fails badly, so she waits outside while Kunin enters. The other applicants stare at him like he's crazy, because he's wearing an eye mask. Kunin activates his brand new magic eye to secretly check out the other applicants and immediately notices they all have some weird little hidden traits. But one girl really grabs his attention. He walks up to her and casually asks if she's the saint from the Holy Kingdom. She confirms it while also wondering how this random guy knows who she is. Kunin cheerfully explains he's just excited because she's the first real-life light mage he's ever seen and he wants to learn everything about it. She bluntly tells him there's no point, since light magic is obviously superior to all other types, so as a water mage, he wouldn't understand anyway. The others stare at her like she just said the sky is green, because there's no magic ranking system. Realizing she messed up, she apologizes and admits she was just repeating what the temple taught her. Then she awkwardly adds that she might accidentally offend people since she lacks normal emotions due to the hero scar she inherited. Kunin lights up at that, joking that they could be disabled besties, which only confuses her more. Right then, Professor Soth and his assistant Sci-Fi arrive to begin the entrance exam, except surprise. Everyone's already accepted into Darashik Magic School because just being a sorcerer is enough. The whole hard exam rumor, pure marketing. Since all 4 students have rare magic crests, admission was guaranteed anyway. There are 3 course levels: basics for newbies, regular teacher-led classes, and an elite independent research track where top mages basically do whatever they want legally. Kunin is thrilled about that last one. The practical test begins. Hank shows off a clever fire spell that draws a flaming path across the ground. Rhea blasts the field with a dramatic wind attack, and Reyes fires an almost impossible to dodge beam of light. Then it's Kunin's turn. He casually admits he only knows 2 simple water spells, which shocks everyone, especially since he has recommendation letters from the Grand Mage of Hulia and the famous Xion. Turns out Sci-Fi has beef with Xion, which explains her attitude. To raise the difficulty, Soph challenges Kunin to break through his wind barrier. Sounds impossible for basic water magic, except Kunin calmly surrounds him with endless swirling red bubbles, creating a floating vortex trap. He even makes a comfy water chair and announces he can keep this up for 2 days, while Soph will run out of mana in half a day. Realizing he's been outplayed, Soph admits defeat. Kunin immediately turns back to Reyes and asks her to show more light magic. He even offers to take her on a parfait date. She refuses. Soph tells him to stop flirting because the interview round is next. As Hank gets called in, Kunin casually asks what the interviews are even about. Soph admits he can't really explain what the interviews are about since the questions change depending on the student, so Kunin will just have to wait and see. While waiting, Kunin casually grills Soph about wind magic, and Soph actually enjoys the chat. After the others finish, Soph asks Kunin what he would have done if their earlier fight had a time limit. Kunin calmly says he would have fused his bubbles into the wind barrier and hijacked it from the inside. Soph is skeptical, he's never even heard of that trick, but Kunin shrugs and says controlling a spell from the inside just feels easier than fighting it from the outside. He also declares water magic the most versatile element since it can slip through almost anything, though he admits he's still figuring out how to push it to its full potential. Soon it's his turn. Sci-Fi leads him to the interview room, but Kunin notices something strange: his magic senses can't see past the door. Since he's blind, he asks Sci-Fi what it looks like, and she awkwardly remembers that detail before telling him it feels like nighttime inside. He walks in alone anyway, only to realize this is true darkness, so dark that even his magic eye gets forcefully shut down. Suddenly, he's surrounded by 7 mysterious figures. One woman steps forward and casually mentions she used to be Xion's master. Kunin immediately tells her not to come any closer because he has a fiancé and doesn't want misunderstandings. She's baffled, especially after hearing he was flirting with Reyes earlier, but he insists that was pure academic curiosity. Changing the subject, she asks if he learned anything today. Kunin excitedly rambles about all the cool magic he saw and how he plans to remix those ideas into his own spells. Satisfied, she places him in the advanced class and even hints she might personally mentor him if he performs well. Unfortunately, Kunin has already walked out mid-sentence because he stopped paying attention once he heard advanced class. Despite being ignored, she can't help but smile when he entered. He attempted a strange, unfinished spell she'd never seen before. Incomplete or not, she's convinced Kunin is going to be very interesting. Back at Kunin's house, his parents receive a letter from Ringo. Good news: first Kunin passed the entrance exam and even made it into the advanced class. They're proud. Then they keep reading. Apparently, their genius son got a little carried away during the exam and painted the school lawn red with blood. His father explodes. First day of school and he's already causing chaos. He immediately considers cutting Kunin's allowance for a month. Small problem, though advanced class students aren't allowed to receive an allowance anyway. So, nice threat, Dad. When the advanced class hears this rule, panic spreads. The school expects them to survive on their own. No pocket money, no family support, just vibes and hard work. Reyes is especially not okay with this. She stands up and tells Professor Soph that this rule is ridiculous. She came here to study magic, not to start a side hustle. But Soph calmly explains that the goal is to turn them into top-tier mages. If they can't earn money on their own, they'll never truly stand at the top. That's why the rule exists. For Reyes, this is a disaster. Her monthly expenses are around 1.5 million. And she also pays the salaries of her 2 maids who double as her bodyguards. Suddenly, student life feels very expensive. The elite class is finally given access to their private labs. The rooms are free, but every material comes out of their own pockets. No one will force them to work hard. But if they fail to earn enough academic credits by semester's end, they'll be demoted. Credits come from professor-approved achievements. In short, succeed or fall. Sophie wishes them luck. Kunin isn't worried. He's already earning royalties from his publications with Xian, and if needed, he can work as a magic engineer. Feeling confident, he casually asks Reyes what job she'd like to take, even invites her to discuss it over parfait. She rejects him instantly. That night, Ringo notices Kunin sulking at dinner. He admits Reyes keeps turning him down. Ringo gives simple advice. If someone says no, stop pushing. He agrees. Then she asks if he'll be okay without an allowance. Kunin quickly assures her he can still pay her salary, which was her real concern. Meanwhile, Reyes' situation is far worse. She's completely cut off from her family's financial support. No money. No supplies. One maid offers to work unpaid, then immediately remembers she also needs to survive. Reyes could earn easily with healing magic, but the church strictly forbids using holy healing for profit. She's stuck. The next morning, exhausted from staying up all night stressing over money, she sees a long line outside Kunin's lab. He started a business, a sleep sanctuary. He installed magic waterbeds and rents 60-minute sleep sessions to overworked students. Slots are fully booked. Even Professors Soph and Safai show up. Impressed, Soph offers him more lab space in exchange for allowing professors to use the service too, and Sci-Fi confirms they'll happily pay. The business explodes. Reviews spread. Kunin starts making serious money. Meanwhile, Rey's house loses magical electricity due to unpaid bills. Sitting in the dark, she finally understands how brutal life without money is. She already asked the professors for help. They told her to ask Kunin for business advice. She thinks he's weird. But starvation is worse. Swallowing her pride, she bows her head and asks Kunin for help, terrified of what he might demand in return. Kunin immediately reassures her. He'd never exploit a desperate friend. He might ask for a reasonable favor someday, nothing more. To avoid misunderstandings, he even calls Safi in as a witness. Professional. Slightly theatrical, but professional. Knowing she needs money fast, he suggests opening a healing clinic. Rejected. The church forbids it. Plan B. Get paid to assist research data collection. Too slow. Then Kunin asks one critical question. Does the church forbid using purification magic for profit? It doesn't. And just like that, a new opportunity opens. He proposes they create a magic item together. Safi warns them that joint magic patents can get complicated, but Kunin is fine making Reyes the official lead since she's the one in need. Paperwork can wait. With no better options, Reyes agrees. Kunin is thrilled mostly because he finally gets to properly study her magic. He calls in Professor Surya, a fellow light magic user who's on good terms with him thanks to his famous sleep sanctuary. She arrives with a box containing shishila seeds. Reyes is stunned. Shishila is a rare, sacred herb that only grows on Holy Land. But Kunin points out that Holy Land simply means land saturated with holy and purification magic, something they can recreate. All Reyes has to do is cast her Holy Sanctum spell. She activates it, forming a glowing barrier around the seeds. Moments later, they sprout. It works. Surya and Kunin are ecstatic. Kunin immediately starts taking frantic notes. Watching him, Reyes realizes he wasn't constantly bothering her to flirt. He genuinely wanted to research her magic. Mostly. Because mid-report, he casually asks if she's fallen in love with him. She instantly denies it. He looks strangely relieved. Then comes the shocking part. Each seed costs 200,000. Students must fund their own research, and Reyes had nothing. So Kunin invested 1 million of his own money. If the experiment failed, he'd take the loss. If it succeeded, she could repay him after selling the medicine. Reyes is deeply touched. With Surya's guidance and Kunin's bubble magic, they refine the herb into shishila pills. Thanks to Kunin's negotiation skills, Reyes secures a contract worth 2 million per batch. Her financial crisis is solved. To celebrate, Kunin treats Reyes and her maids to lunch, telling them to order anything they want. A few hours later, the bill arrives. 220,000. He accepts it as a painful life lesson. Later, Hank and Rhea approach him, admitting they're struggling to monetize their magic too. He agrees to help on one condition: they participate in his experiments. Hank must use fire magic to cook bacon. Rhea must attempt flying with wind magic, because everything is research material to Kunin. Meanwhile, inside the sleep sanctuary, 3 different girls who've been secretly watching Kunin run into each other and quickly realize they're all interested in him. They do not become friends. A month later, Kunin proudly presents his newest invention to the professors, a hairless rat-shaped pillow doll. It's designed for customers to hug while sleeping, since some people still struggle to get comfortable on his waterbeds without the right pillow. When he offers the professors a chance to try it, Hank quickly refuses, saying if it's really that soft, he might never let go. After the presentation, Kunin goes to introduce the product to his exhausted customers. Meanwhile, Saf and Safi discuss how well the advanced class students are doing. Kunin has already built a profitable business, Reyes is managing on her own, and Hank and Rhea are also earning money through experiments with Kunin. The class looks extremely promising. Still, Saf warns that rival factions will eventually start making their move. Right on cue, the 3 mysterious girls who were spying on Kunin arrive looking for him. Hearing he already left, they politely apologize and leave. Meanwhile, Kunin unveils the rat pillow to his customers, and everyone eagerly books afternoon sleep sessions. Once things settle down, Kunin takes a break until he smells something familiar. Hank is cooking the fire magic bacon Kunin requested. Curious, Kunin creates water stairs to go downstairs, only to discover Hank has burned the bacon again. Hank admits cooking is harder than it looks, especially since maintaining a steady fire temperature with magic is difficult. Kunin simply advises him to cook bacon slowly over low heat and keep practicing. Afterward, Kunin checks on Rhea's flying experiments. Rhea can launch himself into the air, but still can't stay there and crashes down. Luckily, Kunin catches him with a waterbed and suggests mastering floating first. Later at lunch, Kunin asks the chef to make sandwiches with Hank's bacon. Even though it's completely burnt, Kunin refuses to waste food and says Hank should suffer the results too. Rhea joins to save money. Reyes asks for a free sandwich, and the 4 eat together. One bite later, Reyes almost chokes trying to chew the rock-hard bacon. At the same time, the 3 spying girls return and wait for Kunin outside. When he appears, they rush toward him, but other customers scold them for cutting in line, forcing them to wait. When they finally reach Kunin, they notice his new pillow package advertisement. The moment he explains how comfortable it is, they completely forget why they came and book a full sleep session instead. Meanwhile, Hank keeps experimenting with low-temperature bacon. Rhea continues practicing floating. Reyes focuses on growing holy herbs. Watching them, Safi says things are going smoothly. But Reyes still doesn't understand how earning money helps them become better sorcerers. Safi explains that most young sorcerers rely on family funding for experiments. If that money disappears, desperate mages can easily be exploited by shady people. Learning to support themselves protects them. Reyes finally understands. Then Safi remembers something important: recruitment season has started. She asks if any factions approached Reyes, but surprisingly no one has contacted her or the others. The reason? The factions did send recruiters, but they're all asleep in Kunin's shop, enjoying his waterbeds. The next day, the group talks about factions during lunch. Reyes explains the 3 main ones: Ability faction, Harmony faction, Rationality faction. They mainly help sorcerers cooperate on large-scale experiments. But Kunin only focuses on one detail: working with lots of girls who admire him. Students can join any faction or stay independent. Hank already plans to join the Harmony faction, while the others are still undecided. Meanwhile, Hank proudly serves new bacon, claiming it's finally not burnt. Everyone takes a bite and instantly regrets it. The bacon isn't burnt anymore, it's just extremely salty. At the same time, faction leaders discover their recruiters spent the entire day sleeping in Kunin's shop instead of recruiting students. Annoyed, the three leaders personally head to find Kunin. But when they meet in the hallway, they realize they're all after the same student. To keep things fair, they decide to settle it with a competition to see who gets to approach him first. Meanwhile, in the garden, Hank keeps grilling bacon but starts getting exhausted. Kunin reminds him that he's paying for all the wasted meat and Hank's salary, so Hank silently goes back to work. Kunin then checks on Rhea's training, and Rhea proudly demonstrates that he can now float steadily in midair. Impressed, Kunin creates a protective water bubble and tells him to practice flying inside it so crashes won't hurt him. Rhea is amazed by the spell and realizes that even though he was the strongest mage in his hometown, he's still far behind Kunin. Still, he's determined to improve so he can earn money and repay his family. Just as Rhea prepares to fly, a huge explosion echoes from the forest. Looking over, they see the three faction leaders fighting with powerful magic, each trying to win the right to recruit Kunin. Rhea is confused, but Kunin simply thinks the battle looks fun. Back at the grill, Kunin suddenly appears and says he's disappointed. Hank has only been adjusting the temperature, which Kunin finds boring. He funded the experiment to see creative uses of fire magic, not basic cooking. At that moment, Saf calls Kunin because a sleep-deprived professor urgently needs a water bed. Kunin instantly creates solid water stairs and rushes off. Watching him turn liquid water into solid stairs makes Hank realize he's been using fire magic too simply. Fire isn't just heat, it can also control flame color and even smell. Inspired, Hank creates flames that smell like perfectly cooked bacon and even infuse flavor directly into the meat while grilling. Right as he finishes testing it, a member of the Harmony faction invites Hank to join. Meanwhile, Rhea tries his first real flight test, but mostly crashes into buildings. After one crash, a Rationality faction recruiter teaches him to guide airflow around his body instead of controlling the wind, and Rhea is instantly smitten with her. Later at lunch, everyone is shocked that the sandwiches taste actually delicious. Hank reveals he also cooked a huge platter of perfectly grilled meats. There's too much food, but the Academy chef buys the extras, giving Hank the idea to start selling magically grilled food. In the hallway, Reyes asks Rhea about flying. Rhea says an upperclassman helped him, and Kunin jokes he could become a flying courier. Rhea also admits he plans to join the Rationality faction, definitely not because the recruiter is cute. Hank shares that he was invited to the Harmony faction, while Reyes received an offer from the Ability faction, though she hasn't decided yet. Kunin then realizes everyone got invited except him, but that's because the leaders of all three factions are literally fighting each other to recruit him. When the fight ends, the rankings are: Ability faction 1st place, Harmony faction 2nd place, Rationality faction 3rd place. Since Bale from the Ability faction wins, he gets the first chance to recruit Kunin, while Kunin is testing Rhea's flying ability in the courtyard. Ilya from the Ability faction approaches him and sweetly asks him to join. Under Loki's influence, Kunin instantly starts praising her beauty and happily agrees without thinking. Ilya leaves proud of her successful recruitment. The moment she's gone, Kunin completely forgets about it and continues the experiment with Rhea. Soon another recruiter appears, Elva from the Harmony faction. She charms him the same way, and Kunin again compliments her and agrees to join her faction. Elva leaves satisfied. Rhea then points out the obvious problem. Kunin already joined the Ability faction. But Kunin shrugs and says if a pretty girl asks him for something, he simply says yes. Then Cassis from the Rationality faction appears and tries the same charm tactic. This time Kunin suddenly ignores her and tells Rhea they're leaving. Rhea is shocked, but Kunin calmly explains he realized Cassis was actually a guy in disguise, so he refused. Ironically, they soon meet the real Cassis from the Rationality faction. She thanks Rhea for already joining their group and asks Kunin to join as well. As expected, Kunin instantly agrees again, meaning he has now promised himself to all three factions. Worried this will cause chaos, Rhea consults Professor So, who realizes the factions had a recruitment order and assumed Kunin would reject later invitations. Meanwhile, at the Ability faction headquarters, Bale throws a celebration for Ilya's success until the Rationality faction bursts in accusing her of lying. After realizing Kunin accepted everyone's offer, the leaders decide they must confront him directly. Meanwhile, Kunin is peacefully sleeping, completely unaware he has started a political crisis between the factions. Far away in the kingdom of Hulia, Princess Mira trains with a sword but nearly gets killed by a bear until her brother Lyall arrives and finishes it off. As vice captain of the Wild Bears party, Mira is improving but knows she's still far from strong enough. Later, her maid Laura brings 2 letters, one from the Senior Noble Academy about her final exam and another from Kunin. Mira becomes excited reading Kunin's letter describing his strange experiments, including cooking bacon with fire magic. But when he casually mentions Rhea, Mira briefly worries about his new female friend before deciding to trust him. The next morning in Durashik, Ringo asks Kunin to start keeping a ledger of household expenses. Kunin admits he usually throws his money into a drawer and forgets about it, though he might have a notebook somewhere with some records. Later at school, Kunin enters class and notices Rhea eating Hank's famous bacon sandwich. The smell instantly makes him want one too. But before he can sit down, Hank and Rhea suddenly grab him and tell him he needs to hide immediately. Kunin, of course, doesn't understand the problem and just keeps asking about the sandwiches. They explain that the faction leaders are furious after finding out he agreed to join all 3 factions, and they're currently searching for him. Unfortunately, it's already too late. Members from the factions have spotted him. They politely ask him to come with them for a friendly chat. Since they're all girls, Kunin happily agrees without suspecting anything, though first he insists on finishing his sandwich. While Kunin enjoys the food, everyone behind him is glaring with murderous intent. Somehow he remains completely oblivious. During the meal, Rhea and Kunin start talking about fish sandwiches. Fresh fish is rare in Durashik because the city is far from the ocean, and the only supply comes from traveling ice mages who freeze fish during their journeys. Rhea wonders if it might be possible to raise fish in the city itself. Kunin finds the idea interesting and agrees to help research it. Unfortunately for him, the faction members have had enough waiting. They grab him by the arms and drag him away. Kunin is brought to the Ability Faction headquarters, a massive castle-like building on campus that he somehow never noticed before. Inside, representatives from the 3 factions are waiting. They introduce themselves and explain the situation. Bale apologizes for dragging him there, but says the matter is urgent. While they speak, Kunin becomes distracted by their special magical features. Bale has a giant black bubble behind him. Lulu has a shadowy tree, and Shilto has a thunderstorm floating above her head. But Kunin barely cares about any of that. What catches his attention is that Shilto is a girl. So naturally, he immediately walks over and starts flirting with her. Everyone is stunned. They knew Kunin was nice to girls, but they didn't realize he was this much of a flirt. Sandra quickly scolds him and tells him to take the situation seriously. Instead, Kunin gets distracted again, this time by Sandra's magical feature, which looks like a school of fish. Assuming she must be a water mage, he casually invites her out for tea to discuss magic. At this point, the faction leaders realize something important. Kunin is incredibly weird. So they decide it might be easier if Shilto handles the conversation, since Kunin only seems to pay attention when a girl speaks. She asks him directly which faction he plans to join. At first, Kunin is too busy thinking about another creepy magical feature he saw earlier. But when Shilto repeats the question, he finally answers. He says he would like to join her faction. However, there's a small problem. Kunin already promised the same thing to the other 2 factions, and he hates breaking promises. So instead, he calmly announces that he plans to join all 3 factions at the same time. And he's completely serious about it. So the representatives basically go, "Are you really worth all this trouble?" Kunin, being honest for once, says, "No idea, but I can prove it." Boom, duel announced. And not just any duel. It's Kunin versus the best mages from all 3 factions. Yeah, one first year against a squad. Totally fair, right? The whole school hears about it and instantly treats it like a live event. Students are excited. His friends? Not so much. They're mentally preparing his funeral. At least Reyes is like, if he survives, I'll heal him, maybe. When the match starts, things somehow get worse. That cross-dressing guy Kunin ignored earlier is still salty and jumps in too. So now it's not 3 versus 1, it's 4 versus 1. Kunin walks in like it's just another Tuesday. Hank starts panicking even more when he spots Sandra among the opponents. She's crazy powerful, but her control is so bad she might accidentally nuke everyone, including the audience. Luckily, Sci-Fi sets up a barrier. Whoever's barrier breaks first loses. Simple rules: protect yourself and destroy the enemy. The opponents are still arguing about who goes first, and Kunin just goes. Why not all of you at once? Confidence level: illegal. Everyone is stunned. His friends are confused. Reyes doesn't care, she's already accepted she'll be doing emergency healing. The duel starts, and Kunin casually launches hundreds of water balls. The others, not impressed. It's just water. Big mistake. The water multiplies, turns into a thick mist, then suddenly red slime rain. Yeah, not normal rain. Sticky, suffocating, nightmare fuel. At first, they're annoyed about their outfits getting ruined. A few seconds later, they can't breathe. The slime is clogging everything: nose, mouth, dignity. No counterattack, no escape, just regret. They surrender. Fight over. The crowd is stunned. That was supposed to be a battle, not a one-sided humiliation. Kunin casually cleans everything up like, "Don't worry, I got this," and turns the slime back into water. Easy. Of course, not everyone takes the L gracefully. Sandra storms off. The crossdresser is furious. Pride destroyed. Later, the faction leaders call Kunin in like, "All right, explain that nonsense." Kunin, completely chill, explains. The red color, just for style. The slime, just water with a different texture. The real trick: you can't cast spells if your mouth is full of goo. Valid point. But here's the scary part: the barrier didn't stop it. Why? Because his spell was so basic and low level that the barrier didn't even recognize it as a threat. He basically cheated the system using beginner magic. Everyone is impressed and slightly concerned. Turns out, he didn't invent this on the spot. He learned it while fighting Xion before joining the school. It worked once. Then Xion adapted and beat him over and over again. So yeah, the move is broken, unless you know it's coming. In a first fight though, free win. With that, all three factions agree Kunin's in. But before celebrating, they tell him, maybe go apologize to the person you embarrassed. Kunin agrees, until he hears the twist. That cross-dressing guy? Yeah, actually a girl. Kunin EXE stops working. He spends hours questioning reality, life choices, and his manners. When his friends find him later, he's just sitting there, deep in thought, silently regretting everything. He did win the duel. But at what cost? Because now he realizes. He acted like a complete jerk, and if Mura saw that, yeah, he's not proud of himself anymore. Meanwhile, back in Huglia, Mura is sitting in her room, casually thinking about Kunin. Nothing unusual, just daydreaming about him like always. Then knock knock, Lyle shows up. Their relationship has actually improved a lot lately. Character development. Nice. He's super excited because today is a big day. Mura is finally taking her exam to become an official knight. When her turn comes, she steps up like a boss. Her opponent starts attacking non-stop, and at first, she's getting pushed back. But then clean move, she pivots mid-parry, flips the situation, and knocks her opponent straight to the ground. Victory. And the reason she worked this hard? Simple: she wants to become strong enough to stand proudly next to Kunin when he returns. Cut back to Kunin. He receives a letter from Mura and immediately gets interested in all the little details of her daily life. But then he reads the big news: she joined the knighthood. He's proud, really proud, but also a little worried. Because being a knight isn't just cool armor and glory, it's exhausting, dangerous, and can break even strong people. So Kunin writes back like, "Hey, don't overdo it, okay?" Later, Mura gets his reply and smiles. She appreciates his concern, but in her mind, she's like, "I'm strong enough to handle this. Even a bear wouldn't beat me now." She's already planning to surprise him when he comes back. But then, she reaches the end of the letter. Kunin casually mentions, "Oh yeah, I joined all three factions, and now I have like a dozen female friends." Excuse me? Kunin technically isn't doing anything wrong, but let's be honest, this is not a sentence you casually drop. Because if Mura actually saw how close he's gotten to all those girls, yeah, he'd be in danger. And just to make things worse, the very next morning, Kunan gets surrounded by a group of girls asking him to help with research. Man really went from solo mage to popular guy overnight. The timing? Suspicious.